Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 Black Order. Mm-hmm. Very exciting. New cover story. We flew out to Nintendo's U.S. headquarters over there in beautiful Washington State and got to play. I was thinking about just for tweets and stuff, like how we quantify it. Hours and hours of the game, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were there all day and played a bunch and...
that was most of the day. Was just
playing the game. Yeah,
which is pretty rare for a cover story.
We did a lot of our interviews in other settings, and because we were talking with people in Japan at one point, and we were talking to the Marvel people, and so we did a lot of the interview stuff happened at another time, which freed up the day that we were at Nintendo to just be like, hey, let's try out this character and let's try out this character.
Yeah, I don't think I've tried Wolverine yet. I'm gonna give him a whirl this time, take some notes, see how it goes. Yeah. I mean, you just talking about the structure for this cover story is a good insight into just how strange this project is. Mm-hmm. And trying to balance out what's Marvel, what's Nintendo, what's Koei Tecmo, and then Team Ninja as a subset within Koei Tecmo. Mm-hmm. Just that communication is bizarre. We're talking about who's designing the gameplay? And they're like, well, it's kind of a collaboration of the three companies. It's a very Nintendo message, which is that confusing thing of who's responsible for what? How do all these entities get together to make, of all things, a new Ultimate Alliance game? It's bizarre.
It is bizarre, right? I mean, it's bizarre that the game's back in the first place after such a long absence. But when you look at it, it has the same feeling that for me when X-Men Legends first came out. There's this sense. I remember when that game came out, this sense of why hasn't anybody done this before? This is so obvious. You have a stable of all these superhero characters, and they're super fun, and action RPGs is a clear fit for what you could do with them and do something that's kind of like Diablo.
Yeah.
And if anything, that sentiment is even more true now for Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, right? The idea that somebody else hasn't already released this game in the midst of all the fervor around Marvel stuff right now is kind of wild.
Yeah, it's weird.
And they re-released the original 1 and 2, I believe, but even that's been delisted, then it's back up. That path is all over the place. I'm trying to figure out how this project came to be. It's the Activision handoff is still a little nebulous.
Yeah.
Nebulous.
Yeah.
Move on, please.
It's not entirely clear, and like a lot of business related decisions, that's something that they weren't ready to shine a big spotlight on, right? It ultimately was that this is a Marvel property and we wanted to bring it back.
And Nintendo's publishing it, and it is exclusive to the Nintendo Switch.
It's exclusive to Switch, which, by the way, I think Switch is a really good fit for this game, and for its tone and for what you can do with it. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more. But
and I don't think that's going to change. I don't think that's a limited exclusive thing.
I don't think so. I mean, it is literally a Nintendo-published game.
Nintendo's putting work into this,
right.
So it's not coming anywhere else.
As for why it's a Koei Tecmo game, though, the Nintendo representatives, which, by the way, it was just fun to see Bill Trinan, who you've probably seen out there doing a lot of translating for Miyamoto in the Treehouse, but just fun to hear him talk about a Marvel game. Just what is this world anymore?
It was weird.
But their explanation was they reached out to Koei Tecmo, Nintendo did, because of their relationship with Koei Tecmo developing games like Hyrule Warriors, which they had a positive experience with, and you need action. Yep. Let's go for Koei Tecmo.
Right. They wanted the action expertise that Team Ninja brought to the table, and I think Team Ninja was, when we talked with them, they were expressing that over there in Japan, on their team, they had a lot of enthusiasts for Marvel stuff, and so they were excited about that possibility. They put together a pitch of hey, we think we can do honor to what has come before, but we can bring our own action sensibilities to this, and there's particular things about the gameplay that tap into that kind of faster action vibe and that kind of thing. And then all three of these different major entities work together to make sure everything was working well. So, for instance, Marvel contributed a writer who...
Mark Sumerak.
Exactly. Who...
Best buds.
Who brought in a certain element of faithfulness to the source material, right? That I think by their own admission, Team Ninja didn't feel like they were going to be able to deliver on in the same way that
Marvel's
they could.
handling a lot of the story stuff, which is nice. So you actually talked to Team Ninja. I wasn't in on that interview, just over the phone here, but did you get a sense about, is this literally the Neo team moving over to this, or who within Team Ninja is making this?
I didn't get a super clear sense of that. I mean, for people who aren't in the know, I mean, Team Ninja is a part of Koei Tecmo, and so I think you'll hear like Nintendo in a lot of ways almost uses that interchangeably. Like they talk, and that was a little confusing to us when we were first there. But it's Koei Tecmo, it's Team Ninja. Like they're the people doing the nuts and bolts of development. As far as individuals on that project, other than the couple of people that we quote in the story, it's hard to say the specifics of who that is and which team it is at, other than it's the Team Ninja guys.
Right.
But yeah, I think whatever this game emerges as in terms of development talent, I think we need to give credit where credit's due to Team Ninja. I mean, Nintendo is certainly doing what Nintendo does and bouncing ideas back to the developers who they're working with.
Even like some of the writing in it, I know that could be coming from Marvel, but they wouldn't even answer like who's writing the item descriptions. But even like the move descriptions are pretty funny, and it's like, is this a Treehouse thing? Is this a Marvel Wit thing? Like, who can we attribute this to?
Yeah, I mean, that's tricky because Nintendo has such a in a positive way, an aggressive role in doing good localization work, right? And so it's hard to speak to some of those specifics other than to say that, like, we know that all of these different companies were involved in the creation of this game. And as fans, we just get to be excited that, like, hey, finally this franchise, after like a decade of being gone,
it's crazy,
is coming back.
And why do you say best buds for the writer over at Marvel, Reeves?
Oh, because we're best friends.
Oh, I see. Not literally, but you have some history. You were
I brag about it all the time, but I worked for Marvel back in like the early 2000s as an intern, and like Mark, who's writing the game, was my boss. And so,
really?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to like loop back around, and I reconnected with him via email, so it's kind of cool.
So you interviewed him, right? Talking about the game, Mark?
Yeah, we did. It was kind of a short online email thing, so it wasn't like a detailed sit down, but we included some of the quotes in the cover story.
Oh, nice. What was the most insightful thing you learned from that interview?
I got the sense, both from talking with him and with talking with the Marvel Games guys who we spoke with, of the enthusiasm behind this. I mean, that was the presiding emotion that emerged out of that. I mean,
to me, that reads like, this game's going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's how it comes across. I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, I don't think that this is something that they just sort of, that's like some throwaway thing for them. I think that they really are genuinely excited. I think part of Marvel's success, I mean, this is taking a step back from just this game, but part of Marvel's success in the last couple decades, really, with their properties, whether you're talking about comics or movies or games or whatever, is that there is a focus on that enthusiasm of bringing that like, we are excited about our own characters. We are excited about the stories we're telling, the properties we're pursuing. When we do a Spider-Man video game with Insomniac and you talk to those guys at Marvel about it, they're like wildly stoked about it. And likewise,
they should be, yeah.
Well, likewise with this Marvel project, the idea that Marvel Ultimate Alliance was coming back, everybody I talked to over there just gets I don't know, like,
they were crying.
They were really enthusiastic, and they were talking about, like, when they first locked down some of the deal around it, like the idea that at the table, I mean, maybe this is an exaggeration, I don't know, I wasn't there, but that they were literally like standing up and clapping at the table when they like locked down the idea that they were going to get to do this with Nintendo. And so
that's nice. I wonder if it's one of those situations too where it's like, maybe it couldn't have come back in a Bayonetta style unless it was for Nintendo. Yeah. The Nintendo muscle really bringing it through. But
the sense that I got, and again, we talk about this a little bit more in the cover story, and I kind of go through the odd team up that resulted in this team up game. I think Nintendo was actively in the lead up to the Switch launch, was actively reaching out to potential partners and talking about them, like, hey, this is what our new console is going to do. We think it's going to be pretty cool. It's got this flexibility to be portable or be on your TV, and kind of making that broader pitch. And that it was kind of in that phase that Marvel and Nintendo made this decision to, like, we should do Marvel Ultimate Alliance.
Because Marvel's also reaching out in a big way. You can see from Iron Man VR, you know, obviously Avengers coming up from Square and stuff. Right. Like, they're making this big push into gaming.
So they, exactly. They obviously had a bunch of other properties that they were pursuing, right? Yeah. But Marvel Ultimate Alliance was one that either they knew they wanted to do and and they hadn't found a home for it yet, or maybe they hadn't thought about bringing it back, but then this opportunity came up and they were like, oh, let's try this. However you do the math, the reality is that it kind of emerged as this thing that like, hey, you know, with what you're describing about the Switch, this sounds like it'd be a really cool fit. And I got to say, I kind of agree. Like, the game is a good fit for what that console does and the audience of that console.
Local multiplayer works well on it.
Local multiplayer, there's online multiplayer, there's, you know, you take it with you on the go, you can pop it back onto your TV, you can sit and play it on the couch. All that kind of stuff, that sort of social engagement stuff, is stuff that I think about with the Switch.
You can even play it 4-player on the Switch screen, which we did.
Oh, like, yeah, the undocked.
Which is very
just
challenging.
to see, like, what would this actually look like if we just set it on a table and tried to play it. Believe it or not, it was chaotic.
Very hard to
but
tell
technically
where you are.
doable. Also, didn't chug. I was expecting it to chug a little bit. There's a lot going on that screen, and I was impressed.
Indeed.
So a lot of people wrote into podcastgameformer.com with some questions about the game. I think we'll answer a lot of them throughout the course of our conversation here. Some people were confused about, like, is this canonical with Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2? We asked Nintendo that, and they're like, we're not really sure. But even looking at it, it's like, well, Nick Fury's black now, so I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I think it's safe to assume this is completely different. And also just talking about the influence of the MCU, because this is the first really, well, I guess, you know, Ultimate Alliance 2 was right on the heels. But this is the first really in a post-MCU explosion saturated world, right? And so there's a lot of influence seeping into the game.
I am a fan of paying attention to things like the canon of something and trying to track story. So I'm just going to put this out there, and I know that it's not going to be satisfying for a lot of people out there, but it's the truth. I think you're chasing a fool's errand in this instance if you're trying to lock this into some particular continuity or connect it to a particular storyline. It just isn't that.
Well, who's out there though, like, who is really into the first two stories?
I don't know.
Like,
that's my point.
They're out there. They wrote into podcastgameformer.com. Yeah, they are out there.
To those people, I'm saying that I think that what we saw of the story is that this is going to be a fun story about the Infinity Stones. It's a retelling, and so it's not going to be like trying to redo the beats of like the movie stuff that we recently saw in theaters. But it's also not going to be an exact retelling of what was in the comics with the Infinity Gauntlet storyline or any of that stuff. It's kind of its own thing, but with the familiar beats of like, hey, Thanos is here, and we got the Black Order, and we got the different stones, and there's a gauntlet, and like,
there's a lot of
stuff's there.
There's a lot of cues from the movie in there specifically. I mean, Nebula's design is almost one-to-one with the movies. There's little things like early on, like you start out the game with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and Drax makes some reference to like, oh, Star-Lord, your terrible music, stuff like that. Like they're going for like the impossible vibe of like, we're going to be James Gunny without really being James Gunn, which Telltale also tried, and it's like, oh, close enough.
I think their ship is called the Milano as well in the game, which was a movie thing. So that's kind of neat to see that kind of stuff. And the nice thing too about it not being like tethered to previous games is like anybody can jump into this. You know, there's like we said, Marvel's more popular than ever. There's probably a lot of new fans who never played those old games. They don't have to worry about 1 and 2 or what happened in there.
Right. Also, I was really thankful because we went on this cover story trip obviously before we saw Endgame. It's like, okay, the Black Order, how much are they really going to matter in a post-Endgame world? But it's nice now, without spoilers, to be like, oh, the Black Order is still in Endgame to some extent, right? Like, my boy Ebony Maw is still in there, getting the job done. Love the look of that
They're
dude.
in the comic, too.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, they're relatively recent comic creations.
They are.
I don't even think they existed when Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 came out.
Yeah.
So.
Which, by the way, we can sort of pitch out there something kind of cool that we are going to be doing later this month is that we asked Marvel, and with their knowledge of what they've done with this story, to put together a comics reading list for us. And so we're going to have that by later this month. They're kind of pulling that together. And we'll post it online. Yeah, we've seen some of what that's going to be. And I'm kind of stoked to have that out there because I know for me and probably for the fans who are asking those kinds of questions, that'd be cool to be able to like come into the game and know that like, oh, I should read this run of Avengers first,
right?
And that's going to help me really understand this particular arc of the game.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's something that we've got coming up.
So just setting the scene for the start of the game, at least, right?
Yeah,
it's Guardians. They go aboard like a Kree vessel. You fight Ronan the Accuser there and stuff. They have all the
I'm
Infinity
impressed that you know all these words and things.
Thank you. Look at
You've learned a lot.
It's honestly, I'm not a comic guy, but I'm an MCU guy, and you guys are both comic guys. We meet in the middle now.
Well, that's the thing is like those movies are basically the comic book form brought to the movie.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
So I would imagine they're adapting the comic books.
Well,
yes.
But I mean, like in more than just like a normal adaptation from like a book to a movie.
Just
like,
the spirit and like the nerdiness,
the spirit, the nerdiness, all that stuff. So
Yeah.
if you were like a fan of the Marvel movies, you're probably a secret comic fan.
Yeah.
You just don't know it.
Yeah. No, that's a great way to put it.
You should probably check out some comic books. You might like them.
Yeah, and we have that list coming up later. But anyways, so you're on board the Kree ship. All the Infinity Stones are there.
Yeah.
Black Order's there. The Guardians, believe it or not, try to steal the stones because they're little stinkers.
Well, they're kind of trying to be helpful, right?
Yes.
They're not trying to like do bad things. They're trying to save the universe.
Right. The stones, something happens. Stones all scatter across the universe, and then the rest of the game is like a race against the Black Order to try and get all the Infinity Stones.
Yeah.
Which will lead you to Raft, which is like chapter 2 of the game, and that's when like when you go to Earth, it's just like bam, 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 character intros, and like they do a very Borderlands style thing where every time a new character comes on the screen, it'll pause, give their name, and then also give like a brief description, which is helpful because when they're throwing so many characters,
there's a lot of characters. I mean, to be fair, that's also that thing you describe as a Borderlands style intro is also a thing that is very common in the comics, right? They'll do the same thing at the early part of a run, like a new number one, right, of a given series. You'll often have that vibe where you like the first time a character pops up, you'll get that kind of quippy. This is this person's name, who they are.
Short little bio,
yeah.
Right. So it's like Nebula. It's like amazing fighter. Gamora's worst headache or something like just this quick thing. It's usually the first thing is like a factual thing. Then second quick sentence is a joke. Yeah. Like that's the way you're introduced to all these characters.
But suffice to say that, I mean, we didn't see a lot of the story really, despite all the stuff we were playing. Some of the stuff we were playing was what were the actual story missions, but we also played some of these like the kind of trials that you go into in the game, and so that took up a bunch of time. So we didn't go super far in. I think the takeaway for me was just with the Infinity Stones having been scattered across the universe, they have opened themselves up to allowing the game to go wherever they want it to go.
Yeah, it definitely seems people are asking about like, you know, how the story compares versus Ultimate Alliance 1 versus 2. And it seems much more like journeying across the galaxy, kind of Marvel's greatest hits thing. So a little bit more in the one vein than like a focused Civil War style like conflict like the second one. Yeah. But characters people are interested in.
Yeah.
They said they're going to be well over 20 was their weird way of phrasing it. And they said, we're not talking 21 characters.
I mean, we
here.
run a roster of all the known ones in the issue. And off the top of my head here, I can't just like list them off for you. But there's a lot of characters in there. And a lot of it's a nice mix of the heavy hitters who you would expect have to be there. You know, a Wolverine, a Hulk.
Well, even
Captain
Wolverine
America.
is exciting, you know, after
Absolutely. I don't mean to imply
Infinite,
that they're not. In fact, I think that those characters are going to be the ones that get a lot of the big play. But you have those heavy hitters. A lot of the heavy hitters, interestingly, are ones that are now heavy hitters in terms of popularity that weren't when they showed up in previous games, right? Like the last, I maybe some reader can write in and tell me I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Carol Danvers was in one of the earlier Marvel games,
as Miss Marvel.
Right. That was before they made that change and she became Captain Marvel and she got the new outfit and all that kind of stuff. And now she's in this game and she's a lot of fun to play. But I suspect she'll be one of the more popular characters picked just because, you know, she's really big on the scene right now.
And now we also have Miss Marvel, which is a character not reading the comics. I'm like, who is this person? Sure. It seems like Mr. Fantastic. I can't quite wrap my mind around what her abilities are.
Yeah, kind of. She's a newer character in the last like 5 years, I want to say she was created, but she is... she was like created by the Terrigen Mist, if you know what that is, which is an Inhumans thing, and you don't need to worry about it.
Okay.
It's a mist that awakens latent powers within you, let's say, and so she does have some. It's very Mr. Fantastic like powers, where she's very stretchy, or she can like blow herself up, kind of embiggen herself, make her.
They
fist
literally
really large.
use the word embiggen in the description, which is a lovely Simpsons call out, I'd imagine.
Embiggen. I think that character is also gotten a lot of attention for a couple of reasons. One is that she's kind of a fangirl character. Like, literally, she is.
She's a fan of Captain Marvel,
yes.
which is why she took the name Mrs. Marvel.
And so she's constantly like talking in terms like she's a fangirl, except she's a straight up like superhero herself.
Little Ant-Man in the MCU towards Captain America, like that type of relationship.
She's also, I think, has gotten a lot of press because I think Marvel is very interested in speaking to all the different audience members that they have out there, and Miss Marvel was, I think, the first like Muslim character who headlined her own book.
Yeah.
And so like I think that there's been a lot of attention there around her, but she's in there and she's a lot of fun to play.
And I'm also reading with my foresight every YouTube comment screaming, "You referenced Mr. Fantastic several times. Are they in the game?" We didn't see anything about the Fantastic Four.
I mean, they could be there. We didn't see everybody, but
we asked them, and they were very cagey.
They were.
Yes. Also, somebody asked, like, "Hey, can you play as the villains? Like in the old games, you'd be able to play as the villains a fair amount." We didn't see any ability to play as the Black Order or anything like that.
No, we didn't see that. We did see Venom.
Right.
And so Venom is a boss fight at one point that we did.
Yes, but didn't see Thanos in action or anything like that.
But yeah, there's a lot of those big heavy hitter characters, whether they're new to being popular or not. But then they also have a lot of characters who are maybe not super in the limelight right now, that I also think could be a lot of fun to play.
Which is interesting because it's that weird thing of like, why is Marvel, I'd imagine, including these characters in the game? Like back in the day, it was like, why is Rocket Raccoon in Marvel vs. Capcom 3? And it's like, oh, I see. They had some plans ahead, you know?
They had
so
plans.
Every character, including this roster, is a little thing of like, all right, Marvel thinks this character is important, so it's easy to read too far into it, but that's part of the fun of a game with so many characters.
I mean, I counted it this morning. Just on our cover, we have 20 characters.
Really?
Oh, really? Okay.
That's cool.
I guess several of those are the bad guys, but still, it's there's a lot of Marvel storylines and characters going on here. And so going back to your point, there's times that in order to just get you the options to play with them, when you get to the raft, which is I think like the second level, you just get like 10 character intros like right in a row. They're just all there for some reason, and they don't care. That's what's sort of funny. I mean, the storytelling's fun, but they also are prioritizing the idea that like, hey, you know, you want to play as the Hulk, we're going to make sure you can play as the Hulk as quickly as possible.
Even if it's overwhelming. Yeah,
like,
introduced.
So you go to the shield point and you change the team out. And it's got the thing that, you know, you get a particular team, and if it's like, oh, well, these are all guys that are on the Defenders, then you get a special attribute bonus.
Right. And some of them are like, hey, wisecracking warriors, original Avengers, heavy hitters, women of Marvel, like the different matchups. The way that Nintendo explained it is like the game's all about creating the ultimate team, right? And so if you can find those sweet synergies, then you're better off as a unit there. Also, because a lot of people were asking, the game will have alternate skins. We didn't get to dive too much into those, but they will exist in there in some capacity. Who knows if it's going to be DLC or what? They weren't talking about any of that stuff. Gameplay. What's it out to you guys?
It's very reminiscent of those old games. It's very, I would say, light and sugary. Like it's very colorful and bombastic, and like it's very easy to play game. Kind of.
Especially on the lower difficulties, right?
We said arcadey. I think that's very appropriate here. I would say even mindless, although I know there are like harder difficulties that will challenge you some, but
so
it's very easy to just get it together with a bunch of friends and just like kind of button mash it.
On the difficulty thing, there's going to be 3 different difficulties that they're outlining right now, where it's basically, let's see if I can find those exact names, but it's easy, medium, and hard, and the hard mode will unlock once you finish the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they are building it around the idea that it's very much pick up and play. You always have 4 characters on screen, and so if I'm playing by myself and you come into the room, you can just kind of grab a controller and hit start and start playing, and then when you're done, you leave. And it's super simple that way. You never talk because we don't like to talk at all. Yeah, it's very straightforward, but that I think it's kind of what it should be. I mean, if it was much more complicated than what it is there, I'm not sure it would be the kind of thing that you could just be like, you know, sitting together at a party and like having some drinks and eating some snacks and playing this thing and talking about what happened this week on your favorite TV show.
So you have like
that kind of game.
Yeah. You have like your special moves, which max out at 4 is what they're communicating at this point, unlike the old games. But the part that like you talk about the gameplay being pretty arcadey, at the same time, I don't think I was prepared for like the actual underlying RPG systems. That was a surprising amount of the trip. Was like, let's walk through how all of these different progressions work, how the system works, the ISO 8 system. Miller, can you give a high level version of what's going on here under the hood?
Yeah, let's talk about the ISO 8 thing. To step back to your first thought, though, I will say to dovetail off of that one of the more impressive things about the game is how many audiences it feels like it appeals to. I hope in the final analysis, when we play the full game, it will feel like it is appealing to all those audiences well, and that's not a determination we can make after just a few hours. We'll have to wait for the review on there. But at least in what it's trying to do, it has that appeal of the really arcadey stuff that you can sit and play with your like 8-year-old kid and have a good time with. Or play with your friends when maybe you've all had a few drinks and you're not totally focusing. But it also, for either solo players or players who are partying up every night and like trying to move forward through the game, there is that greater level of depth inherent to a really robust RPG progression system. So the thing you mentioned is one of the like, there's like an equipable dynamic. This is something called ISO 8 that's shown up if you've played a lot of recent Marvel games. It's shown up in some other games. I think it got introduced in one of the mobile games.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But it's basically like an isotope that magnifies or adds powers. And so you, in terms of mechanically how that happens in the game, is that it's like a reward that you get as a drop. And you equip it on an individual character, and it does cool stuff.
Like decreases damage when HP is lower than 25%. It'll add lightning effect to your attacks, stuff like that.
Exactly. So you have customization of individual characters with that. And then there's a bunch of other systems that you're also progressing through, playing through and just getting XP. But there's like a bunch of other currencies that you're getting ability orbs, and so you get these drops, and they then power improving your different abilities, improving individual characters, and also as you play through on your account, there's this sort of grand alliance.
Enhancements.
The Alliance enhancement screen, which is this like big, almost like Final Fantasy X style grid.
Sphere grid, yeah.
Right? It's a little bit like that. I don't want to draw the comparison too closely, but it's kind of where you've got these hexes and you complete this hex and that opens up the adjacent hexes.
And it's all arranged like for the Infinity Stones. Like, okay, here's the Soul Stone area. Here's the Power Stone area.
Yeah, and so you're slowly unlocking these different hexes that affect your whole team. And so if you have a play style you really like for instance, if you really like just spamming powers, right? But you're not so worried about being super durable, then there's a way to kind of customize your team to be that way. That you're just going to have a lot of energy for using powers, but maybe you're not as strong with your basic attacks, or you're not as durable as you would be.
Right, and that's like the interesting dynamic I think with this game overall is, and especially on the cover story, just trying to understand all the different attacks. Okay, what are the different boosts here? How does this work? And like seeing the depth of the RPG systems, where it's like, wow, that actually is, I think, deep enough to satisfy people who are interested in action RPG. It's not Diablo, everybody, but it's like, okay, there's enough meat on that RPG bone, right? And then going back to the gameplay, and it's like, what's going on? Oh my God, where am I on the screen? I'm spamming attack. Let's go.
It's really wild. I mean, that's one of the big things that I think remains to be seen about the game, that I'm very curious to see the final version of the game in July, is that it is a frantic, chaotic superhero battle game.
More so even than the gameplay footage that they've shown, and we're going to be showing, because at least the default is damage numbers are on the screen. Yeah. You can turn those off, but like with damage numbers on the screen combined with how many attacks are going on the screen, it's like, oh my God in heaven.
There's like a it sounds weird to say, but there's like a learning curve to just reading the screen.
Right.
Because there's so much going on, and tracking where you are with the what are frankly really awesome effects around the powers. You know, you break out Iron Man and he's blasting out missile barrages and he's doing the crazy like laser spin thing.
Venom turns into what looks like a killer whale coming up from the bottom of the stage.
Oh yeah,
and so
that's a cool attack. Yeah.
You can imagine like 4 of these like crazy characters who are all doing their things all at once. And then sometimes dozens of enemies on screen.
With elemental damage all over the place, right?
It gets really bonkers and colorful. And if they scaled that back too much, I wouldn't like it because it wouldn't have that bombastic flavor that Ben was describing earlier.
Yeah.
But if they do too much of it, then I'm going to be like, what's happening?
And you talked to Team Ninja about that.
I did. It is absolutely a thing that they are conscious of. They see it as one of the big, that and the related issue of like camera tracking and how the camera works is one of the things that they say is a big focus for them in the final months. And I take them at their word on that.
So if you get the game and it's like feels right, it's because we help them fix it.
That's right. It's all us.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's a thing that they are working on, and I hope it shakes out well, because if it does, then if it can hit that little in-between space, it'll be really cool, because you'll get the awesome powers, you'll get that sense of like just insanity exploding on screen, but you'll also be able to tell what's happening.
Right. And one of the weird things, too, is playing multiplayer on the same system, at least in the build that we played, you couldn't lock on to enemies. You can only lock on enemies if you're playing by yourself.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Do you want to explain the hero cam? Because they've been using it in some trailers. I think there's some confusion about what that's like.
It's just a zoom. Well, yeah, I think they even announced it when they first announced the game. They kind of showed it off, but it's just a zoomed in camera a little bit more, so it's a little bit more of an over the shoulder style camera, which is nice for single player because it feels a little bit more like a traditional action game, I think.
But still, if you're playing like local wireless with friends that also have the game, stuff like that, everybody can be in that view, which I feel like that'd be the best way to play, because then in theory you'd also have lock on if everyone's not sharing the same screen, and that hero cam does look nice to get a little closer and get more focus on your character.
Right. If you're playing like multiple players on one screen, it's just not an option. Like, it literally isn't.
Which kind of makes sense, because who are you going to follow?
Yeah, makes sense. Other things that stood out to you guys?
One of the things that stood out to me was just the fun and variety of the abilities of the different characters. I mean, did you have who were some of your favorites?
It's interesting because it's like I feel like people I gravitate to are the people I just like. The characters I just like already, like Thor and Spider-Man. I remember playing as Spider-Gwen, which is kind of fun to see her in a video game. Well, maybe she's been in a mobile game. This is the first time I've played with her in a video game, and she has a really cool like wrecking ball attack where she has a big ball of webbing she creates and like just wrecks dudes.
She was definitely the most fun character that I played. We have a video with gameplay coming up later. I think next week we're going to air that, so you can see some of her attacks in action, which is nice.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite, Miller?
I think it's pretty hard to go wrong with Hulk. I mean, he's a lot of fun.
Specifically because Ben Reeves, the way he plays Hulk, is spamming the emote system. There's emotes in the game, by the way. So when he was down, he just never stopped screaming, "Hulk approves! Hulk approves! Hulk approves!"
That's right. He was very really happy with all the smashing.
He was really, really pleased. I think that kind of character is really fun in this kind of game, because he's, in part because he is really big on screen, and so he's kind of, you can see him just kind of wade into the action, and like a lot of kind of bruiser characters, they've built him with like an attack that leaps him into the action, and so you're just always bashing away at guys, and so I liked him a lot. Rocket and Groot is pretty cool because they're like
a combo.
You play them as a single character, and so they have this interesting mix of Groot's kind of branch attacks that are kind of clearing stuff that's nearby, but Rocket's got his gun, and so he's shooting range stuff.
I like that combo. Part of me wishes they were separate characters, because I would like to play as just Rocket sometimes, or just Groot, but
you can just only hit the one attacks that Rocket
That's
uses.
true, just the Rocket attacks.
But
it's interesting that there's no other, at least that we saw, other characters that are combined like that.
Yeah, not that we saw anyway.
Yeah.
Captain Marvel's really fun. She feels like the powerhouse she should be.
Right. When she does her special attack, she turns into binary for like a little window that you can see in there. Right. Really I guess we didn't mention that. Yeah, there's Ultimate Alliance Extreme attacks. Where everybody can jump in there, and then if everyone uses it at the same time, it is extremely powerful and fun to get everybody's splash screen on the screen at the same time.
They had something similar in the second game, and I think those were a little more elaborate because they were a little more customized to like the two characters' attacks would combine into a new style of attack. Whereas this is kind of like you're still seeing largely the same visual effects from each character, but maybe they're tweaked a little bit. Like I remember Storm and I can't remember who it was.
Well, they have the two kinds, right? There's the extreme attacks, which are like you're describing, right?
Where two characters do their big attacks together, right?
Two or more. That's the extreme attacks, right? When it's all four, I think they call it, gosh, I can't remember the exact terminology. It's like an alliance extreme, I think.
Ultimate alliance extreme attack, yeah.
But then you have the synergies, which are a little bit more kind of like what Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 had going on, where you actually have individual two characters that when their meter is ready for it, you'll see down in the lower part of the screen where it shows the headshots of each, you'll see little links between them that shows like you're in the correct proximity and you both have the energy to do a synergy, and you can pop one of those off to do like a specialized attack that does have a unique animation. So that might be like a Storm and Thor come together to make an electric tornado. Right. So those are kind of neat.
It's largely I guess what I was just trying to point out is like largely the same effects with like maybe some extra like visuals on it rather than what we saw in Ultimate Alliance 2, which I think was a little bit more customized.
Okay. Gotcha.
Well, it's cool that mechanic is essentially still there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then you have one of the other big things, and I think maybe Team Ninja thinks about this as one of the more important. It's simple, but it's an important innovation to the game. There's this whole stagger meter thing on heavies that you fight, but certainly on mini bosses and on bosses, and that is one of the main ways the moment to moment gameplay encourages cooperation, because it's this, in addition to their health bar, they've got a stagger meter. Anybody who's got a stagger meter is pretty hard to bring their health down without dealing with the stagger meter, but by just doing damage to them, you lower their stagger meter, and then they're stunned and they can't do anything for a few seconds, and you can like bash on them.
And that's when you want to pour it on.
Yes,
and do all your big attacks then.
So you have there's a quality where if you're playing, especially with 4 players, you're going to have a couple people who are like, okay, you go handle the ads. There's a bunch of like Hydra agents come in. You focus on those guys. Hanson and I, we're going to go and we're going to like try to knock this guy's stagger meter down. We're going to knock Venom's stagger meter down. And once he's low,
do that. Why does Hanson get to go?
You have to do the ads, man.
And where am I on the screen again?
That's harder to tell. But you're we bring that stagger meter down, and then when that happens, hey, come on over. He's down. And we work
I'm busy with the ads.
Yeah, sorry.
Hulk approves. Yeah, in general, like after all this time playing and going back and playing the original games, like I think it feels a lot like those older games. Like if you still like that gameplay and you're interested in a Marvel game, like this seems like an action RPG for the Switch for you.
Yeah, I mean it's colorful. It certainly doesn't look like those old games. It doesn't feel primitive or anything like that in terms of its presentation.
Still on the Switch, it's not exactly the graphical powerhouse.
Yes, this is not. I mean, in the scale of Marvel games, I think Spider-Man set a certain high bar in terms of realistic presentation.
Fair to say, Miller. Fair to say.
This is not that.
Right.
But it fits well with the arcade aesthetic. Bright colors, flashy explosions, that kind of thing.
Hey, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3.
Yeah.
We're going to be rolling out features all month long at gameformer.com/MUA3, MUA3. So there's going to be gameplay coming up on Friday, and then also snippets of gameplay tailored to like the characters all next week. All week long, right?
Yeah, well, we went through all those powers, right? And so we get to show off. I think that's one thing. I don't think anybody else has done hands-on with this game yet, and so we did with most of the characters that we were able to play, and highlighted each of them have these 4 distinct powers, and so we go through them.
We have the 2 exclusive characters, Miss Marvel and Hawkeye, which we couldn't stop talking about.
We had our choice of any character.
And
we said, no, make ours Hawkeye, baby.
Got my eye on that guy. And so they'll be up as well as a couple others, so all week long. And then we also have already a hands-on, a written discussion of me and Miller's time with the game. So
yeah,
that's
Mr.
already on the
Marvel,
site if you want to read that.
Yep. There we go. That was just a clip from a larger show called The Game Informer Show. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, or GameInformer.com. We take the fun opportunities and exclusive information from Game Informer magazine and boil it into a show that airs every Thursday with exclusive cover story information, developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So come love games with us.